I want to bring in the former chairman of the Texas Pension Review Board. He knows a lot about what the pensions in Texas are doing to the budget gap. Shad Rowe of investment firm Greenbrier Partners is with us this morning live from Dallas. Shad, good to have you back on the program. Governor Perry is saying that he's going to cut spending without raising taxes to close this gap. Is that possible?
It's going to be tough. You know, the point you made earlier was we don't have an income tax. There's talk of parimutuel betting and casino gambling and all sorts of other ideas for raising money, but it looks very difficult to me.
It does indeed, and it almost looks impossible to try to close this gap without some sort of tax hike or maybe even a new tax.
Well, they're going to have to come up with something. You know, if you have a fiscal crisis and you're operating with one arm tied behind your back, you know, one arm is raising taxes and the other is cutting expenses, and if you can only do one, it makes it a little bit more difficult.
Right.
So.
Right. It does make it only more difficult. And Shad, from your experience, and particularly having been at the Pension Review Board, what does the governor have to do on the pension side in order to try to close this gap?
Well, the pension problem is a long-term problem, and it's one that people have pushed down the road a long way, but the returns haven't been there the last 10 years, and it's problematic whether they're going to show up. But that's that's an enormous problem. We're talking about a $10 billion a year shortfall now, $20 billion over 2 years, the 2-year cycle. But
and you have strong doubts they'll ever make that back, right? You have strong doubts.
Well, the pension problem is much bigger than the fiscal problem. I mean, they can fix the current deficit, but the long-term problems with the pensions are much, much bigger dollars, and that's going to be a problem that has to be addressed also.
Well, what would you recommend?
Well, with respect to the current problem, I would look for other sources of revenue. The legislators have run on a platform of no new taxes, so they're not going to do it. They have a supermajority, the Republicans, and that isn't going to happen. So the expenses are going to be cut, and somehow we'll finesse our way through it. But the longer-term problem are these pensions, which are hugely underfunded, and people are living longer, and no one really knows what's at the bottom of it.
Shad, you know, the reason why we're focusing on Texas is that it's not just Texas. It's pretty much all the continental states here are dealing with these budget problems. Is there any particular one state that you've looked to and said, look, they're dealing with it correctly, we're not?
I haven't seen that state.
You have not even New Jersey.
No, and in Texas, you know, remember that Texas does not have an income tax. We have a growing population, and we have growing job growth. And in fact, Texas, I believe, has created more jobs in the last couple of years than the rest of the nation than the rest of the nation combined. So we have growth, we have people moving in, but we have no income tax, and we have expenses that have gone up. So we have more options than most people, although we are surprisingly shaky in terms of our fiscal problem.
I mean, you have all that growth, and still there's a fiscal mess going on. Shad, thank you so much.
But if you're
no, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Betty. Bye.
No, I'll leave you one last point. What did you want to say?
Well, I mean, but the Texas, I was going to make the point. We have options. We have a growing population, growing job base, and we have no income tax. But if you're a state that has a shrinking population, a shrinking job base, and expenses that are very difficult to cut, they have a bigger problem. So Texas is a worry, but it's not as big as the places that don't have the good things happening that are happening right here.
Right. Shad, thank you. I appreciate it.